See Pest Geek Podcast, Living the Wildlife Podcast, Stephen M. Vantassel, or his affiliates are not responsible for followers' use of the information provided here. Hi, everyone. Stephen Vantassel here, wildlife control consultant, bringing another episode of Living the Wildlife as part of the Pest Geek Podcast family. Glad to have you on board. Do take a few moments, if you would, and subscribe to the channel and ring the bell to be sure you're kept up to date with all new additions. And so as we're coming into here in the holiday season, I hope that you're going to be spending some time with your family and friends, because we're recording about 9-10 days out from Christmas at this particular point. So we're really glad to have you with us. Again, if you need to reach me, you can reach me at wildlifecontrolconsultant@gmail.com. That's wildlifecontrolconsultant@gmail.com. Would love to hear your comments, thoughts, suggestions for new shows, and yes, even criticisms if you care to share those. Do visit us on Facebook as well. We have our Pest Geek Podcast family there. Join the revolution, as Franklin calls it. So if you have questions, comments, there you can do a shout out and get some information from other colleagues out there. So we have a guest today. Her name is Melissa Schreiner. She's an entomologist from Colorado State University Extension, and she's located in the Tri-River area of Western Colorado that is sort of famous for its orchards. I didn't know you grew or had orchards in Colorado, and that your water problems must be a challenge out there with trees.
No doubt.
Soak up a lot of water. So, but that's a subject for another conversation. So yeah, she's going to be talking to us today about the kissing bug and its relationship to the bushy-tailed wood rat. And so kissing bugs really freak me out. And so, especially with Chagas disease. And so if you're not familiar with that, well, then you're listening to the right type of podcast, because we have an entomologist, because they have the kissing bug down there in Colorado. You may not have heard of it here in the US, but we do have it here. And so she's going to talk about us. And so welcome, Melissa, to our Living the Wildlife podcast.
Thank you so much, Stephen. Yeah,
well, tell us a little about yourself and your background and what got you into bugs and your present position.
So it all started when I joined a youth farming program growing up, and I followed some of my peers up to study soil and crop sciences at Colorado State University as an undergraduate. And I took an entomology class there from our state entomologist and extension specialist, Whitney Cranshaw. Mm-hmm. And I caught the bug, as they say, and I found a real passion to apply some of the skills that I had to a new field to me. I knew plants well, but I hadn't ever really thought about what it would be to become an entomologist until I took this course, and then pursued a master's degree working with Whitney. And we did a heavy emphasis on horticultural entomology work, but Whitney, as our state entomologist at the time, he's now retired, he helped develop a lot of my instincts in extension, if you will. I really learned a passion from him while I was his student. So
was he a state entomologist underneath the University of Colorado, or was he hired by the state?
So he was hired by Colorado State University, our land grant institution.
Oh, all right.
He was a professor of entomology, and then he had an extension specialist appointment, and he worked at CSU for well over 30 years.
Probably. Yeah, I think I heard him speak. Didn't he publish a big book on, I think it was identification of
insects? He has a garden insect book.
Yeah, okay.
He's done Pests of the West. He's well known for his work, his passionate work, working with stakeholders across the state of Colorado. He just actually won an award through ESA.
Did he?
He's a fellow now. So he was recognized this year for his, many decades long work, interacting with the public, inspiring, knowledge of insects and educating about them throughout.
I think I heard him speak about 4 years ago, I think, when he was up here in Montana. Well, you have, of course, the problem of kissing bugs, of course, and is it the bushy-tailed wood rat that's out in your particular area, or is it a different wood rat?
So that common name I'm not familiar with. The scientific names I was able to pull here were, let's see here. I know it's Neotoma species in general are what we refer to as wood rats. And what I was able to find was, let's see here, I can find my species information.
They're in Neotoma?
Yeah, so albigula, the western white-throated wood rat, was cited
Ah,
as one of ours, and
okay.
Micropus, the southern plains wood rat. So those are
Okay.
the
All
ones I was
right.
able to find in some of my research, though. I think it's noted well that that genera of wood rats are what our genera of kissing bugs interact with as
Yeah.
hosts. So
So what's the deal with those? With those, I'm not familiar with those two wood rats. So we have the bushy tail wood rat, which does go down into Colorado, but it must not be on the western side of the divide. It must just be because it doesn't have. I don't think it goes far into your state. But so what is the deal with this kissing bug and its relationship with these wood rats?
so basically these wood rats are obviously, they're in wild areas. Our issue here in my county happens to be in areas where folks have inhabited and built out along cliff faces and within very rural areas of canyon lands. So folks will even build homes within or alongside canyon walls. And
Mhm.
of course, these pack rats that live in that environment then are very close to these human the structures that we inhabit. So
Right.
it can be quite a problem for folks that are almost living out in very much in a wild environment. It's not necessarily that these are domesticated relationships with triatoma species. We do
Right.
have kissing bugs that are more related to, they will just feed maybe on domestic animals or will just feed on humans. But the type of kissing bug that we have here is Triatoma protracta, and it's just interacting with these wild populations of pack rats. But now humans are in the equation. They're moving into those wild spaces out here
Right.
in Western Colorado.
So the kissing bug feeds on the wood rat?
That is correct. So,
Okay.
kissing bugs in general, they feed on vertebrate animals. It can be a wide range of vertebrates. In our case, I believe mainly it's mammalian species that
Mhm.
are typically targeted worldwide. Kissing bugs are an issue in the New World. I mean, all the way down into the tip of Southern America, we have issues with kissing bugs, and typically the famous encounters with Chagas disease and kissing bugs and humans are typically thought of more in the areas of Mexico, the Caribbean islands, Central and Southern America are where we have really big issues with
Right.
Chagas disease. And yeah, so basically, I mean, cone nose bugs they feed off the blood of various types of vertebrates to reproduce and to sustain themselves. They need the blood of that particular host species.
Yeah, I think that I've read somewhere that the kissing bugs that we have don't seem to be good transfers of Chagas because one article I read, and it's a little dated, so I'm a little worried whether that's still true or not. And that is, it said it was kind enough not to defecate on your face after it bit you. So,
That is correct. So
okay.
the species that we have here in Western Colorado, Triatoma protracta,
Yeah.
um, it does not defecate directly on the host, and in that case it can spread much easier if that's the case. So Triatoma protracta actually doesn't defecate on its host, and in that way it does actually help quite a bit. But to date, we
Right.
don't have any recorded infections of Chagas
Okay.
disease from Colorado. We in general, the interest around the kissing bug in our area was sparked when we had national press go out that reported that an organism that can produce Chagas disease was detected in Colorado. And so this news coverage back, I believe it was 2019 or 2020.
Okay.
This news coverage was, written in a way that reported actually, in a way, some incorrect information. They got some of the species of Triatoma wrong. They suggested that it was actually the eastern species that maybe had extended its range and was now found in Colorado, and that's not the case. We believe that Triatoma protracta has, had a long relationship with wood rats in our area.
Right.
But it's important, yeah, it's important to note that the awareness of Chagas, in Colorado is really due only to the fact that it's, been recently detected from a species. So we were able to find it in the excrement of Triatroma protracta here, but it has not been vectored to a human being in our state to date that I was able to find in the record. So
yeah, okay. So I would assume you would have had, so if someone tested positive for Colorado right now, it would probably be they contracted it somewhere else and then moved.
it's very possible. Yeah. So
Yeah.
Because of the nature of that, this parasite that causes Chagas disease lives in the feces of kissing bugs, or cone nose bugs, as we also call them. And but due to the habits of the Western cone nose that we have, it's considered to be, poorly capable of transmitting this parasite to humans compared to other species of cone nose bugs that we would say, we'd find in Central or Southern America.
Yeah. Do you
Sorry.
have an idea how far north the proper vector is in terms of, has it broken through the southern borders? I thought I heard that it was in southern Texas now.
I want to say I have heard it's in southern Texas, but I have not heard of a more northern.
Than that. Okay, so it seems to be
just barely. That's kind of
temperature. Is it probably a temperature thing?
I think it's temperature, humidity, obviously host preference. This is a group that there's really strong favoritism.
Yeah, yeah. Sure.
But our Western cone nose is it's not really considered to be, an issue with Chagas because, like we were saying, the organism is not transmitted when the insect bites. It's when that feces is in the situation. And because our cone nose bugs are basically going to the bathroom somewhere else, that helps a lot. When hosts get bit, and then they scratch their wounds and they can rub, mucous membranes like eyeballs, Chagas disease could potentially happen, but the likelihood of this happening with a human is very slim to none in our state. We feel. But yeah, no human cases of Chagas have ever been reported here in Colorado, and but it has been detected in the feces of Triatroma protracta, our Western cone nose. So,
so it's
not
possible.
To say that it's possible. So it just hasn't.
Well, that's that kind of nuance. Well, that's actually more comforting. So what it does mean for pesticide applicators who may have a client or a vertebrate pest controller who's dealing with a client with wood rats or your wood rats, he or she would need to keep that in mind, that it is a possible risk for the client and maybe even themselves. I mean, do these insects ever hitch a ride? I mean, is that common for them? Or
so I think in areas like Central and Southern America, it can be very common that they are vectored easily. They also are quite strong flyers. They're attracted to lights. In areas where they are more associated with the, domesticated animals like poultry, it can be a big issue with them getting into our human dwellings in those areas. But in our area, I mean, they really are very much out in the middle of the desert, and very few people really do live there. Though in our area, south of Fruita, the city of Fruita, Colorado, quite a ways, there is some developments that are very much built within canyon lands. And so we have had some positive detections of Triatroma protracta in particular, when middens are abandoned. These Western cone nose bugs they're able to last for months without a blood meal. I don't think it's quite maybe a year, but they can last for quite a while, even into like a scenario could happen where a midden is abandoned and then could be re-inhabited by wood rats. And it was just this, I think it was just this June or July, I had a nymph turned in, and it was absolutely, I knew right away, it's a very creepy looking insect in general, but that very cone nose shape allowed me to, have worry, and I investigated closer. And this individual that had brought it in actually had them in the past, and they hadn't been at their house for quite some time. They don't live in their home built into the canyon year round. And when they arrive, they always do an inspection, and they work closely with pest management professionals because the area has been priorly documented to have Western cone nose.
Okay.
Yeah, it's quite an
So
interesting situation.
so other than let's leave aside the removal of the wood rat. Okay, so if I'm a homeowner and I'm in wood rat country in western Colorado, and I'm worried about whether I have this particular insect in my home. What would be your professional advice to someone? What would be the ways that they would mitigate possible exposure? Again, we're leaving the wood rat aside for now, because that'll be like the next question.
Okay.
But what should someone do?
That's tough. I mean, really locating if wood rats are in the picture is number one. So
Okay.
I think super is jumping to mind there. But I mean, if you were to locate a wood rat nest, you would absolutely want to work with a pest management professional to get rid of those wood rats.
Okay.
Complete removal or sealing yourself away from those areas is number one, because it's
So harden the house.
harden the house. I mean, and of course, removal of debris piles like shingles, or I mean, when folks are building homes, anything in proximity to your structure that could be used as suitable habitat, piles of wood, rock piles. I'm trying to think of other examples, but that could be an attractive shelter site for Western cone nose.
Okay.
So just, trying to exclude yourself from them. But, some on the behavior of Triatroma protracta and a lot of kissing bugs is they're very stealthy. They're lurkers. They creep along cracks and crevices. They hide very, very well. They're quite flat insects. They can sneak in and out of very small spaces. So sealing the perimeter, having a perimeter spray or some type of barrier, we can get into insecticide use. But I think having, really tight window seals and, caulking cracks, these are really important precautionary things that we can do to try to prevent them entering our structures.
So are there any traps or lures that attract them?
There are some attractants, and I wish I had looked into them a bit better. I actually was just reading about a few hours ago that there's some efficacy with baiting them, and but also just repellents are a big site, I think, for future investigation, just to see how well those work.
So you said they were attracted to light. So would light traps for flies be effective?
It's in areas, especially in Central and Southern America, I do believe that they would use light as a tool.
So is there a particular bandwidth of the UV spectrum that they're primarily, is it white light that they're attracted to? Like we usually tell people to go with the yellow lights to try to reduce insect pressure. Does that?
I wish I knew more. I can't really speak to it. I'm unsure of what light spectrum they're most attracted to, though it's likely in the literature.
Yeah. Okay. All right. And what about actives that would kill them? I mean, any contact,
pyrethroid
would do it.
Pyrethroids are very efficacious against.
So if someone trapped the wood rat, let's say the wood rat is deceased. I'm assuming that's legal in your state. We always follow state law, everyone.
Yeah.
Okay, so don't just go whacking it because it's there. You have to make sure you're going to be legal. But let's say the wood rat is gone. Would someone
be treated for pyrethroids?
Treat the nest and middens area.
Yeah,
and then correct. Wait several days and go back and actually try to remove that nest, or continue
to appropriately seal it off. That's been done. However,
bury it.
Yeah, I mean, I think burying or trying to collapse the midden or excavating out that material, I'm actually unsure of how exactly you would attack that.
That would be hard.
Extremely difficult to even, especially in big slabs of rock, canyon wall.
I see. In terms of sealing,
they're up in the cracks of this canyon, and it's like almost it's physically impossible to actually reach really where they are. So you have to, in a profound way, seal off your your dwelling.
Yeah.
So actually,
Okay.
this homeowner that had cone nose, a positive detection this year in 2022. They had been over the years working with a pest management professional, and it was that, this one area where they suspect there's a midden that had gone inactive has become active again, and there are
Yeah.
likely pack rats that they were not able to detect before, unfortunately finding a nymph crawling around on, I think it was a hallway or a bathroom floor. So I mean, these people, when they enter their home after, not being there for a
Wow.
period of time, they have to do hands and knees on the ground. Your face is looking for these nymphs, for any signs.
I couldn't handle that. I don't think I could handle that. I
It's
think I'd
quite
have
remote, where these folks are living. Not many folks are encountering this. It's not a very popular problem. This was a very unique inquiry this year, but
I think I'd be putting out a lot of glue boards probably, and just to see it maybe near the windows, because I would, if I'm assuming if they're attracted to light, maybe they'd go to the window and then drop down. I don't know. I just think it's just, they just creep me out.
they are. I mean, them being blood feeding, and I mean, there's very little to no pain when you're bitten. It's almost impossible to detect when you've been bitten. Typically they are nocturnal, and they are associated with hosts that typically are diurnal and are sleeping at night so that they can access their prey, or resting at night. Doesn't have to be sleeping, but they're very they're subtle in a lot of ways, and I think that makes them creepy to me.
Yeah. And so would someone know that they were bitten? What's the likelihood of someone knowing they were bitten?
During the active bite, actually, it's very hard to detect.
I'm assuming
but I would assume afterwards, some people actually have somewhat of an allergic reaction.
Okay, like a mosquito.
So you would have some type of welting or raised bump, some type of redness, maybe an itchy type pain. But there's many substances in triatomine saliva that are, let me see if I can get this word right. They basically have analgesic, I think is the word.
Oh, analgesic. Okay, so it has
analgesic properties. Thank you. Yes.
Makes it less pain.
Yeah, so you almost can't detect that. So, but some people do have kind of an allergic reaction to them, and they then would notice they have been bitten. And I can talk some on some of their behavior with but pretty much wherever they're found, in whatever habitat they're found, they're very secretive insects. They like I said, they prefer shaded crevices, and the nymphs camouflage themselves with dirt and debris. It can be very hard to detect that you have them in your dwelling. Tritomes feed if a host is available. I think the literature I read said every 4 to 9 days. But if there's a lack of a host, they can last for months. I don't know. I've read literature on bed bugs that say they last to a year without a blood meal. I couldn't find quite that long for kissing bugs, but I would wonder how long can they really go without a blood meal? It's quite a long time.
Yeah, I would think, and also with bed bugs, I think that's like perfect environmental conditions, I think, with that too. And so that's on
the high end. So it's it's multiple months that you can have nests get abandoned by wood rats, and this insect, Trichoma protracta, in our area can persist for quite a significant amount of time until a host maybe even will return to that nest or re-inhabit it.
You said they're strong flyers, so they could theoretically fly to a new nest if they felt like it.
They could, and in areas where they're very commonly encountered, along human dwellings, they are constantly flying to porch lights and entering homes that way.
So let's talk about their life cycle a little bit. So do you know how many stages they go through, or what the mating process is, and then how do they progress?
So I know some. They're in the family Regiviidae. I wanted to talk some just on both. that whole group of insects. But Regiviidae, this is a large morphologically diverse group. And the majority of them that are described are predators. They're actually, considered beneficial insects. The one exception of this entire family is the subfamily Triatomini.
Right.
So these kissing bugs or cone-nose bugs, that we're discussing today, they're easily confused with some other members that are actually quite good insects. In general, of course, they're feeding on blood, of course, but let's see here. Where's my section on that? In general, Regiviids, they're a type of true bug. They have piercing, sucking mouth parts where, the majority of the family that this insect is in, all of these members are using that piercing, sucking mouth part to attack another insect. And it's,
Right.
That's considered a beneficial service. But in this case, triatomines are stabbing us with their mouth parts to drink blood or of their host in particular. But for many Regiviids and hemipterans, they have 5 nymphal stages. Nymphs are distinguished by having smaller eyes, a lack of wings. They lack ocelli. Both sexes of adults and nymphs, they will require blood for development. Females will mate about 1 to 3 days after their final molt, and they'll deposit 1 to 2 eggs daily. About 10 to 30 eggs in their lifetime, and they can, on the higher end, I think about 1,000 eggs was seen out of 1 adult female in her lifetime. So, but the number on average is about 200 eggs. They're laid mainly singly on a substrate. Some species will glue their eggs to that substrate. But their entire life cycle can be as short as 3 to 4 months. And the average is about 1 to 2. So it's a pretty quick life cycle from egg to the end of an adult life. So
born in spring and mature by the end of July, August, and they're ready to start dumping out eggs September. I don't know, when does it start getting cold in your area?
So it can be we can get early frosts in October.
Okay.
Mainly November is considered, I think it's considered a colder month.
Yeah.
But yeah, there's so many things that drive, development times, of course.
Sure.
So factors like we were discussing earlier, environmental temperature, humidity, availability of hosts, different feeding intervals among different species. Nymphal diapause can be quite, depending on the area, can affect things as well. So,
and diapause means what?
Diapause is so it's not really hibernation, but it's a period where the insect's metabolism rate drops, and there's not a lot of activity, and they're typically sheltering through an environmental change like cold temperatures, like throughout a winter.
So they have just gradual metamorphosis then? There's not a complete metamorphosis. So they look the same, just smaller as a nymph.
Yeah.
Through
and
the
then
5 stages.
Yes, through the 5 stages. Yes, they look very similar. And I think, the adults compared to the nymphs, I think they look quite different. The adults have more of a shine, and they've got, obvious wings on them. The nymphs, they're not quite as black. They're maybe more of a reddish color. Don't have that shine maybe quite like the adults do. But
any tips on identification of the problem kissing bug versus the non-problem kissing bugs? Because when I look at them on a book, I'm like, gosh, they're looking awful close the same.
Yeah, but
do I need a microscope, or is there some thumbnail ways to help narrow at least the search down a little bit?
Well, I know that the number of mouth parts, so I believe it's 4 segments that Triatroma species have. But I think even the main problem that I find is it's other Regiviid species that are so similar in the way that they look, and they're very common insects, especially in Colorado homes. So, I mean, some of the lookalikes are, we have bee assassins, so, Apiomeris species, masked hunters. These are really good insects, especially, found in our gardens. And masked hunters, they're their nymphs even disguise themselves in very similar ways to Triatoma species.
Okay.
We have wheel bugs, the more south you go, Western conifer seed bugs. These lookalikes, I would say, are almost, more of our problem for probably homeowners or pest management professionals to detect against. So I advise, be really careful and make sure that you don't make an identification too soon, and, seek a professional
right.
to help confirm your finding.
And so don't just spray and pray.
Yes,
Maybe
often
get an
folks will.
ID first before you start carpet bombing.
Yeah, absolutely. Especially because there are so many individuals in this family that are actually the majority of them, more than 99.9% of them are good insects we want around. But yes, of course, we do have that exception. And of course, that is the kissing bug.
So for our Colorado listeners, would they be able to package one and send it to you, or do they send it to a state location if they needed an ID, if they didn't have an in-house entomologist in their corporation, their company? What would be the process for that?
Yeah, so the Colorado Department of Health and Environment has taken a role on of, investigating these species. We have a medical entomologist, Chris Roundy, who's great. The year I've worked here in Extension, they've been great collaborators. Typically, if one of these suspected cone noses or kissing bugs were found, you would start by trying to contact, maybe a local county ag agent. They would then contact maybe, their regional entomologist, myself, and I would be able to, make contact with the Colorado Department of Health and Environment on behalf of the individual. That's what happened this year is I notified our Mesa County Public Health individual, and I also notified the Colorado Department of Public Health and Environment, and they are there to help support. They've got a great website built out on, some of their work that they're doing here. But yeah, I would say if you are in the Colorado area, by all means, don't hesitate to reach out. I would be happy to help provide an identification confirmation, and so would the folks at the Colorado Department of Health and Environment. So,
all right. So the process says if you find a cone nose bug, we'll just call it cone nose bug, and you were wondering whether it could be the Triatoma protracta. Is that the right one? The right one?
Yes.
If you think it's that, contact your local extension educator, ag agent in your area. It's part of the Colorado University Extension program. Start there. Then they will take it to the next step if they think it's going to go up to if you take pictures, take good pictures, folks. Pictures, but they probably need to have a microscope, it sounds like, in order to really do the positive ID on it.
Yeah, typically even an ag agent would likely send it on to me. And I mean, because there's so like that, those masked hunters in particular being like jet black, just like the, Triatoma species that we have, protracta. You just want to make sure. I mean, it's really not a common problem that you would find a cone nose, but it would be common that you would find, one of the lookalikes. So, most likely if you find something, you want to rule out first that it's not a good guy that you're thinking is a bad guy, if you will.
And so how would they package these? What would be the best way for them to package the sample? I'm assuming if someone said, well, I have 30 of them right here, it's probably not Triatoma protracta. They're not a aggregating insect, right? So they're more isolated.
Yeah, you'll likely find, one of the lookalikes or Triatoma protractor would be, I would see that, maybe in the nymphal stage, they would be very easily confused, very hard to tell apart. I would say that, once you have the specimen, putting it inside, a non-breakable rigid container like Tupperware or a vial would be great. Typically, if it's an adult, it'd be fine to turn in without preservative, but nymphs don't preserve as well without, a preservative agent. Like typically it would be ethanol. I have seen people turn in isopropyl alcohol. Insects get a little rigid in isopropyl, but it's good to have a preservative so that insect in transit to me or to, where it's going doesn't decay and cause issues for, confirming its identification. But yeah, it's common that you would likely stumble upon it when you're, when I was cleaning out the shed, at a farm I was working at before I was in extension. I found a nymph of a masked hunter, and I could see people easily coming into contact with a lookalike that would maybe throw them off. You know, they may say, "Oh no, this looks so similar to a kissing bug."
But even the nymphs would be big enough to bite us, obviously, and so there's a potential for small, but a potential for a contraction of Chagas disease on that way. Do they know where the parasite comes from? Is the wood rat a host or a reservoir of Chagas disease?
Really good question. I'm unsure, actually.
Okay.
Yeah.
And so do you have any information in terms of how, I mean, because people can be infected with Chagas and not even know it. My understanding is that it could be decades before they're typically, I think it's a heart condition that occurs with it.
I have some symptoms here. It starts with fever, your glands enlarge, anemia, a disturbance of the nervous system, but also the cardiac system.
Okay. Now, are those late symptoms, or do they occur even after the bite? I'm wondering what the prodromal phase is, which is the non-symptomatic phase.
Yeah, I think these occur, probably well after you've, been bitten and have had it. So I'm not totally sure initially. I know that it said fever pretty initially. I mean, your body has trying to fight something off. That would maybe be a sign.
Okay. So if you have a bite around your lips, and does it typically the lips, and why is it the lips?
And that's where they get that kissing bug name. It's such a good question. I'm not sure I really know the
blood flow and the fact the skin's different? Did they just not able to? It's
possible that I know people have been bitten all over the face.
Okay.
Historically that's been documented. I would imagine just the sheer amount of the heat that's registered because of all that blood flow in your face. With a lot of blood and a lot of I would imagine maybe that's a temperature wise, maybe a hotter part of our body. It's also where we're emitting CO2, and that's something that can attract.
Okay. So a CO2 trap could be a possibility for the kissing bug then?
It could be very interesting. I don't know what research has been done using CO2, but that would be an area of future research if it hasn't already been investigated.
Yeah, I almost feel that this is almost like an orphan problem in the sense that it's such a small market, that won't get the attention it probably deserves, because it could get ugly for some people. And the problem is there's no cure that I'm aware of Chagas disease.
I couldn't find one either. There is none. And it's
so this is serious. I mean, we either prevent it, because it doesn't seem that we can penicillin it, and just, you're done. So it's a devastating illness from what I understand. It can really ravage someone's life later on.
Yeah, it can be horrible. And it affects, I think, all ages. It can be pretty devastating. The pictures from my medical and veterinary entomology textbook are
horrific.
Horrific to see
terrible.
What people suffer. I mean, and maybe this, mainly, to say this is happening, of course, in Central and Southern America.
Right.
The World Wide Health Organization is involved in helping to solve some of these issues, down in areas of Brazil and, where there's really top.
How would you solve it? I mean, just where would you start? I mean,
it's really challenging to think about how they, in areas where, they didn't even really know where they, just mapping the distribution and then figuring out how can they go in, working with pest management professionals in these countries, how can they, have a community-wide approach to, helping to solve these issues. And really it comes down to, providing that education and, getting boots on the ground to go out and really educating these communities on how they can, prevent.
But do they even have the resources to harden their structures to keep the bugs out?
It's quite difficult with how, intertwined, these insects are with human dwellings. I mean, chicken coops and, cacti and wooden roofs that can provide shelter. I mean, it's so hard to say with, these insects so commonly in the environment.
Well,
it's hard to get it all that information to the folks that really need it. I know that there's
yeah,
been massive efforts throughout, this the beginning of, from 2000 on. I know there's been like really heavy work done
heavy work in the area.
in the
Well,
area.
you've mentioned chicken coops several times, a couple of times here, and I'm intrigued by it because I do think as more and more cities make the mistake, in my opinion, of allowing residents to have chicken coops, I think it's amazing. Americans have very bad historical memories. We really don't remember, which is really good because we don't hold grudges as much as other countries do. But we really have a bad historical. You think about bed bugs and the association with chickens. You look at, the fact that all the feed grain and the rodent issue. No matter how good of a producer you are in, your little backyard thing, you're not going to keep all that grain out of mouse hands. I mean, I don't know how that's possible. I mean, maybe somebody will invent. And now I'm wondering if this particular triatoma, could it feed on a chicken, or is it really just tied to this wood rat? I mean, that's just its thing. Is it really that tied?
Yeah, it's very tied. I mean, wood rats are the only documented host. And I really feel that, the literature documents well that they, have species specific, they have favorites. They really don't cross over that too much. There is a host preference complex with this whole subfamily.
Yeah, here's where I'm nervous about that. And I'm not doubting what you're saying. Here's where I'm nervous. And that is, I'll have a favorite food because that's the only food I can get to. But if we're in a different situation and all of a sudden someone starts raising some chickens and that becomes available, and again, I'm not an entomologist and I'm not claiming to be one, but you read literature sometimes with a woodchuck. I had a colleague out of Connecticut. He said, you read the literature and it says woodchucks hibernate alone. And he said, not true. He had a situation where he trapped like 6 out of a burrow and they were clearly hibernating together. But it was the impact of urbanization and how they had overcome or adapted their behavior to the conditions on the ground that they were encountering. And I just get, I'm like, I'd like to have, maybe someone could do an entomological study and, put a bunch of chickens in a room and few triatoma and then, watch them. Then I'd feel better about it. If they starve to death, and then that would be okay. Well, maybe they won't feed on it. But I'm just like, I don't.
With so many changes, I know that, this maybe for our area wasn't necessarily historically an issue. I think it's that's more of an issue. So as our environment changes,
that's what I'm worried about.
That haven't historically developed out, and we start encroaching in on, more pack rat middens, it easily could be the case.
I would think so.
Change. We don't want to completely rule out that is a possibility, as insects are quite adaptable, as you have pointed out.
I'm just saying, I'm just talking about the vertebrate side. It's just, you just kind of wonder. Even bat bugs, I'm told, they like bats, but they will come down and bite humans. They can't really, I guess they can't thrive on us. And so it really does, they bite, it doesn't work very well, but
we get lots of bat bugs in our area too. We're a pretty good bed bug area as well. We have quite
really. I'm looking
Denver's really hot for bed bugs. It's
if you find some bat bugs, I'm looking for them so I could put them in a collection. So I'll pay you for that.
I'm your girl.
I'll pay you for those as well. And by the way, folks, I'm still looking for Norway rat scat. So I had people say, oh, we're going to send it to you. But of course, if the mail doesn't come, we know it's you. So, but I'm still looking. I pay $20 plus shipping. So there you go. I'm looking for Norway rat scat and wood rat scat if you can get that too. So just to throw that out there. Anything else that we should cover? Last minute tips for I think it might be good to go over again the fundamental advice for pesticide applicators and vertebrate pest controllers, what they
Yeah,
should do with their
absolutely.
client, what they should do for themselves in this particular situation.
Yeah, let's go through those major steps of,
Okay.
just attempting, control. So you would want to inspect and identify the area of, possible kissing bug activity. That is very important. Removal of animal nesting areas within close proximity of structures is highly encouraged.
How close is close?
Close is close.
100 yards, 200 yards,
I would say I would
farther
say
better,
at least 100 yards would be
100
really
yards. Okay.
be smart to do a
100
very
miles.
formal survey. And what really becomes the problem is when, like in our area with these, there's a subdivision of homes that are all built with,
Right.
The front of the home looks like a home, but the back side and the interior walls of the home they're pretty much fancy cave dwellings.
Oh, so
So
they
I mean,
went right up against the rock?
there are parts of the interior of these homes, and almost all of them, have parts that are natural forming rock walls on the
No kidding.
canyon. So
Oh,
it's
wow.
even more of an issue within,
Yeah, it's hard to seal. It's hard to seal that. Yeah.
off. Exactly.
Yeah.
So it's really, be smart about your build. If you are going to build somewhere extremely rural and more in like a canyonland area, I would highly recommend making sure you consider, exclusionary,
Right.
build out your architecture in a way that you're thinking of excluding interactions with any pack rats that could be living up in those walls. But so, getting back to this, the master list of what you should do is, I would say, the removal of, conditions like around a structure that may be attractive. So debris piles, you would really, especially in areas I know, like in Central and Southern America, that those are areas of refuge for these kissing bugs. So in our area, I mean, if you have habitat that could be considered suitable for pack rats or wood rats, I would say get rid of it.
Neat and clean.
Neat and clean, yes. But exclusion from, as much as you can exclude using a physical barrier like caulking, or, I would suggest folks need new windows with those really tight seals. Even in areas like in Central and Southern America, they don't even suggest people having wall hangings. Like they will say that even that little hole,
bare walls.
Walls. Yeah, I mean, having that hole with that nail entering the drywall, I mean, these insects can come through that hole.
Are you serious? That's amazing. The nymphs can squeeze through that?
They can squeeze through openings, very tiny openings. So I mean, it's really hard to protect, to keep a barrier, and you want to do everything you can to caulk and really, to discourage physically the entrance of kissing bugs.
All right, that took it up a new level. All right, so that means traditional screening is not going to be enough.
Yeah, I mean, I would think that they're such a flat insect. I mean, it's like similar with, simicity with bed bugs and bat bugs, and they're such a flat insect that they can slide through tight openings.
Yeah,
unfortunately for us. Applications of insecticides, I would say, especially if you're in an area like these folks are, south of Fruta and in these canyon areas, I would highly recommend that, perimeter sprays would be done, and in the addition of, actively managing those wood rats with a pest management professional, and regular checks too, because what happens is a pest management professional will come in and they'll do great work getting rid of these wood rat middens, but and they'll go inactive, but without those being properly sealed off, they can be re-inhabited. And so just having someone regularly check your area. So, I mean, for folks in this area, I recommend that they, every time they, if they have been away from their home for a period of more than even 2 weeks, I would say you need to enter that house like it's been in lockdown, and you have to check everything. And I would say that regular, regular visits from pest management professionals would be encouraged. I mean, working closely with someone to check those midden areas for activity would be
Would you
neat.
think monthly would be appropriate? And during the obviously the warm period, I mean, I guess if you have getting sub-zero temperatures, I doubt the kissing bugs are doing a whole lot at that particular time. But let's just say,
I'd say
it'll be
multiple times over a summer season would
yeah,
be
multiple times. It's
would be
because a nymph would take how long to under ideal conditions, when would it want to convert to the next stage?
I mean, it could be, with their life cycle being, it's about an average of 1 to 2 months, sometimes on the higher end if things are pretty perfect. They can
Okay,
be
so
4 months long.
five changes in 1 to 2 months. So yeah,
Yeah.
well, at least probably a monthly visit would probably be wise. If not, this gets too expensive at a point. But it's
It does get expensive, and it's just I don't know, if you're gonna build a home out in the wildlands, you just should be prepared for what you're
country,
gonna have to do to
yeah.
protect that space,
I
because it
call it the
really
country
is.
tax. Yeah,
Yes.
yeah,
It's
without a doubt,
important.
country tax. Okay, well, if we haven't heebie-jeebied everyone out here today, then we're glad to have you stay along. So we've been listening to Melissa Schreiner. She's an entomologist from Colorado State University Extension. She's located in the Tri-River area of Western Colorado that's famous for its orchards. And so we've been talking today about the kissing bug. She called it's Triatoma protracta. So that's the one that's the nasty one. I guess there's a lot of kissing bugs that are very beneficial for us, but of course we're just focusing on the one negative one that's really associated with wood rats out there in Western Colorado. So it does have Chagas disease, the parasite that causes it. However, fortunately, it's kind enough not to defecate where it bites. However, it might spread. It can spread the disease to you, but it's unlikely. So we don't want to create paranoia with our clients. We don't want to use fear tactics to sort of gouge your clients. That's not ethical, of course, but we do need to make sure people are properly informed, and you need to be informed in terms of how they're managing this particular insect. And so always follow the label, of course, follow your state law of dealing with vertebrates, just those normal caveats, but definitely protect yourself. And if you have a insect that you believe needs to be looked at more carefully, you can certainly contact your local extension educator there in Colorado and see if there is they can do an inspection of it and see it, and then ship it up the chain to make sure an entomologist looks at it, because a lot of them look the same. So a little bit of informative. So not a lot of solutions right now. So hopefully we'll get some more down the road, but this disease is definitely something we want to prevent. But if you're doing exclusion for people out there in the hinterlands up there against those rock cliffs, and that's certainly going to be something that's going to be helpful for them. And make sure, caulk, use your excluder, copper stuff it, don't use your steel wool, and harden that thing up like it's a Fort Knox. You don't even want water going through it. But of course, don't do it with wheat fence. Just make sure things are excluded out. So as much as possible. So be careful with wheat fence. All right. Well, thank you very much for listening. So everyone, you've been listening to Living the Wildlife as part of the Pest Geek podcast family. We're really glad to have you on board here. So definitely take a time to ring the bell, subscribe to the channel. You can also reach out to me at Wildlife Control Consultant at gmail.com, wildlife control consultant at gmail.com, and do join us on Facebook, of course, with the Pest Geek podcast. And you've been listening to Living the Wildlife. Why? We call it Living the Wildlife because we want you to live the wildlife, not be the wildlife. Take care, everybody.